If you've ever played a long game of Monopoly, you know the banker can never actually run out of money. If the box is empty, the banker can just start cutting blank paper into little rectangles, write down new numbers, and create cash from nothing. Today, the United States government owes over $36 trillion. Yet, they sit in that global banker's chair. They can create the exact money they owe at any moment. This leads to a strange question. Why would a government that can create infinite money ever need to borrow a single cent? To understand how we got here, we have to look back at a world with no cash or credit at all, a world of just people, land, and time. In these early societies, if you wanted to trade for someone's help, you didn't give them coins, you gave them physical calories to keep them alive. In many places, rice functioned directly as money. Because it took real human sweat and hours of labor to grow a single cup of rice, its value was tied to that physical effort. If you stored a massive surplus of food, you held power over others because you could trade it for their time. But physical goods have limits. Rice eventually rots, it's bulky to carry, and it's heavy to move across long distances. Humans needed a better container to store the value of their hard work. They needed something that wouldn't spoil, was easy to carry, and everyone agreed was worth something. This search for a durable, portable way to hold on to the results of their labor led to the invention of universal money. Eventually, the world settled on gold. It was rare, it didn't rust, and everyone wanted it. You could take the labor of 100 people working for months, sell their harvest, and compress all that energy into a few small gold coins that fit in the palm of your hand. But how do we decide what things are worth? Look at this balancing mechanism. On one side, we have a tank holding all the circulating gold coins. On the other, a tank holding all the available rice. The spinning wheel in the middle is the market. A price is just what happens when the wheel turns to balance the total money people want to spend against the physical goods that are actually available. If a drought hits and the rice level drops by half, we still have the same amount of gold pushing on the wheel, but less food to go around. To protect their dwindling supply, sellers ask for more gold for every bowl. This means your money doesn't go as far. We call this supply-side inflation. If there's a perfect harvest and the rice tank overflows, the opposite happens. There is so much food that there isn't enough gold to buy it all at the old price. To move their stock before it spoils, sellers have to lower their prices. Suddenly, your single gold coin buys twice as much. This is deflation. While stable prices are the most fair for everyone, healthy societies naturally grow. They invent better tools and produce more things. Because the goods tank is always expanding, there is a constant pressure to expand the money tank to match it. Eventually, carrying heavy gold became a chore. People started leaving their metal in secure vaults managed by goldsmiths. In exchange, they got paper receipts. People soon realized they could just trade those lightweight receipts at the market instead of hauling the metal around. The gold stayed in the vault, but the paper became the money. Intrigued, the vault keepers made a discovery. They noticed that on any given day, only about 10% of people ever showed up to trade their paper back for real gold. The other 90% of the metal just sat there, unused. The bankers realized they could lend out those idle coins to other people in exchange for a promise to pay them back. When they made a loan, they gave the borrower more paper receipts. Those people would spend the receipts, and the merchants they paid would bring that same paper right back to the bank for safekeeping. 10 physical coins could suddenly support a multiplying web of 100 paper promises moving through the economy. Bankers eventually realized they didn't even need to touch the gold. If everyone accepted paper as money, they could just create a new paper promise every time someone needed a loan. As long as people trusted those promises, the money functioned perfectly. Notice how the original gold coins fade away here. The physical limit was gone. This was a massive shift. Money was no longer tied to how much metal you could find in the earth. Instead, it was built on a towering structure of human trust, the promise that people would fulfill their debts in the future.
But if people lose trust, the whole system collapses. To stop that from happening, governments created central banks, like the Bank of England. These institutions acted as the ultimate safety net, stepping in with emergency cash if the private banks ever ran into trouble. This centralization gave governments a powerful tool. When they needed to spend massive amounts of money quickly, like during a war, They could issue government bonds, which are essentially IOU notes. The central bank could then create brand new money to buy those bonds, giving the government the cash it needed to survive. Usually, creating that much money would cause prices to skyrocket. But during World War II, the United States avoided a disaster because there was somewhere for that cash to go. Remember our rice and gold tanks? If you add more gold coins to the money tank, you have to add an equal amount of rice to the goods tank to keep prices steady. During the war, American factories worked 24/7, cranking out an explosion of physical goods. Because there was so much new stuff being produced, the new money had something real to buy, which kept prices from spinning out of control. By the end of the war, the U.S. held the majority of the world's physical gold. At a meeting in Bretton Woods, America used this power to rewrite the rules. They made the U.S. dollar the center of global trade. Only the dollar would be backed by gold, and every other country would tie their own currency's value to the dollar. This meant the U.S. dollar was now the most important money on Earth. To buy supplies or grow their economies, other nations now had to earn, borrow, and save American cash. By the 1960s, America was spending heavily on wars and social programs. This flooded the world with more dollars than the U.S. had gold to back them up. The math was no longer working, and everyone knew it. Other countries began to worry that their dollars wouldn't be worth gold for much longer. They started aggressively cashing in their paper money, demanding that the U.S. send them actual gold bars from its vaults. America's physical wealth was quickly draining away. In 1971, President Richard Nixon officially severed the link between the dollar and gold. He announced that the U.S. would no longer trade its gold for paper. This changed the nature of money forever, making it based purely on the government's authority. To understand how this works today, think of tickets at a county fair. Inside the fairgrounds, those little pieces of paper are as good as cash because the person running the gate requires you to use them for every ride and game. Their value comes entirely from the fact that the authority in charge says they are the only way to play. Nixon's decision didn't just work for the U.S., it turned the entire world into America's fairgrounds. Since the global economy already relied on the dollar for trade, everyone had to keep using the tickets, even though they weren't backed by anything but the authority of the U.S. government. So, back to our paradox. If America can print these tickets whenever it wants, why do they still borrow? The problem is that printing tickets too fast for your own people causes prices at home to surge, making life unaffordable for everyday citizens. For most countries, spending way more than they earn is a path to disaster. If they borrow too much, investors get scared and interest rates spike. Eventually, the country can end up failing to pay back what it owes, leading to a total economic collapse. But America has a unique advantage. Because the rest of the world uses the dollar for international trade, the entire global economy acts like a massive sponge. When the U.S. government spends more than it collects in taxes, those extra dollars don't stay at home and drive up local prices. They flow out to other countries who are eager to hold on to them. These foreign countries then use those dollars to buy U.S. Treasury bonds so they can earn interest. This creates a situation where everyone is stuck together. If other nations tried to sell all those bonds at once, they would drive up interest rates for everyone on Earth, including themselves. Their own economic health is now tied directly to the stability of the American dollar. In the end, that $36 trillion isn't held up by gold or complex math. It's held up by a shared global belief. As long as the rest of the world still wants to play in the American arcade, the game keeps going.